Hey guys, and welcome back to the briefing room. I know I took like a few week hiatus. I started a podcast on my other channel, my gaming channel, youtube.com/thexplays. And I also started streaming and trying to find the balance is something I'm still working on. But I never forgot about you guys. Some housekeeping. Obviously, I started that podcast, as I mentioned. It's called Extra Extra. It is on, like I said, youtube.com/thexplays, but it's also on Google Podcasts and Spotify, and maybe Apple. That's still to be seen. But, yeah, so got lots of places for you to check out. It's gaming news, so the most recent episode, that's supposed to come out yesterday. It's going to come out today with this. We talk about Sony purchasing Bungie. So check that out. We also adjusted our Patreon. I'll be doing a video about that soon. Talking about our Patreon. So keep an eye out for that. There's 3 tiers. I think they're fairly reasonable. So, without further ado, let's get on with the reaction, shall we? Starting in 3, 2, 1. So, this episode's called Spacefold. It is the 3rd episode of ROBOTECH. It's also called Spacefold in the Japanese version as well. So, in Japan, this episode released on October 7th, 1982. Or October, did I say October 7th? October 17th. I don't know if I said that correctly. 1982. In America, it released on March 6th, 1985. Which I actually kind of chuckled to myself when I read that for my bullet points, because someone in my inner circle, they have that birthday, March 6th birthday, so shout out to them. Got my water because I'm going to be doing a lot of talking today. Lots and lots of talking. Gotta stay hydrated. So here they are explaining the first 2 episodes again. Let's see. I want to say next episode they start backing away from the story of the first couple episodes. They just kind of want to reinforce the story. So we already know about all of this. So I actually did a video on Spacefolds, and they're going to be just, which is what happens in this episode, which surprisingly enough is why it's called Spacefold. I basically go into Einstein talking about wormholes and the theory of relativity and all of that stuff, with just what I've researched about it, right? Okay, so right there, Lisa's face was definitely like a dirt face. The animation for this episode definitely. Pew, the first two episodes, mwah. And then it's just like, all right, well, we need to pace ourselves. We can't have this looking good all the time, right? Doesn't look bad, but there's definitely a quality dip. You can definitely tell there's some off-model things. But anyway, so essentially the video, I play the scientist, what is it? Professor Stufendutel or something like that. Kind of playing off of the whole Dr. Lang thing, you know? And in that video, like I said, I discuss the idea of space folds. Technically, on a very technical level, that's what a wormhole is. A wormhole is a fold in space. Narrowing it down to the most layman's of terms for people that are not smart like me. So, is this... Oh yeah, I remember. They already revealed the big alien dude. I was trying to remember. It's been so long, I couldn't remember if they did it the first time or not. So, this is a little bit of a weird spot. Where Roy, first of all, they have like a little robotic arm inside their robotic arm, which is bizarre. And then you just pick up the cockpit, and they're just like, "Yeah, let's stick it on here, and we'll just go from here." But going back to that video I did, I was super proud of it, and in fact, I went to actually put together like a highlight reel to audition for G4, the G4 relaunch. Obviously, you can tell. Didn't get it, right? It's okay. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? And that was one of my more proud videos that I could remember. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll put in me being Professor Doofenshire or something like. Can't remember what it was. It was like Struteldoodle? I think it was Struteldoodle. Professor Struteldoodle. And so I went to do that, right? Man. In the recording and the editing, I just... Oof. I'm not nearly as proud of that video as I once was. The first half of the video, I didn't have any key lights on me. I was just doing it in the dark for whatever bizarre reason, right? And then the second half, I had remembered to turn on my key lights. That was weird. I'm in my living room now rather than my garage, so there's all sorts of weird activity going on, and I don't know what's happening. Anyway, so not only do I have half a video where I'm in the dark and half the video where I'm in the light, also during outtakes, like after I would mess up a line, I would then look at my script and reread the next section a couple times before going back. I completely left that in the edit. It's like, oh no. I don't know that I'll ever redo that video, but maybe I go back and re-edit it at the very least. Like, oh my goodness, that was not good. Not good at all. So that's my little plug on it. It's... So, Impregnable. So anyway, Rick here, he has this funny interaction with Lisa. It's the one thing that everyone remembers. Right here. The old sourpuss line. That's the one thing everyone remembers about this version of the show. And you know, I don't think that's as bad as what Minmay says. Speaking of Rick, I don't think I've mentioned this in my other commentaries. Rick actually, has a couple variations in his name. In the Japanese version, he is Hikaru Ichija. I hope I said that right. I tried my best, but that's his name in Super Dimension Fortress Macross. And then in the original write-ups for this script, it was Rick Yamada. Which, if you're wanting to, stray away from, the Japanese name, right? Why would you then, if you're already going Yamada, you might as well go with his original name. I'm fine with Rick Hunter. I'm fine with adaptations. I saw a great video, I believe it was by Saber Spark, about adaptations compared to, dubs. It was either him or I don't remember. If I find it, I'll put it in the description. But I'm fine with adaptations. Adaptations, I think, are a good thing, as much as the diehards don't like it. Because anime would have never been successful over here in the West if it wasn't for adaptations, because it got us into, that those worlds. Whereas if they went with their modern, with their, with their, cultures, which is so outlandish to us, right? We wouldn't have been able to really get into it. So, that's my whole 2 bits on it, right? We all have opinions, and that's mine, so. Yeah, some of these animations really are not great looking. Hey, there's the armor class. So, Rick kind of shows, some of his character flaws in this episode, and you'll continue seeing them throughout, right? And it's one of those weird things where his character flaws are why people like him. Whereas, you can make the character way too not flawed to have an arc. When you decide to go with a positive character arc, there's such thing as a flat character arc, where yes, the main character would not have a lot of issues, which is fine. But on a positive character arc, you can either go way too not imperfect, and so any kind of development you do to it feels a little forced, right? I've done a couple videos on this before. Ruby. In the show Ruby, the character Ruby, they they had made her a little too perfect, so when they did do that character development, it didn't hit. At least for me personally, it didn't hit. And that's the risk you take going that route. But you can also go the other route and make the character flat out unlikable with all their flaws. I can't think of any specifics offhand, but I know the mockbusters, the movies that are released to try to cash in on people making mistakes on, oh, this says a fish and it has Finding in the title, it must be Finding Nemo, and it's not Finding Nemo, that kind of thing. You can make those characters way too unlikable. And then no one cares when they do have that turn. And in this, Rick, for the most part, really has that good balance of likable character flaws. Which is why he's the series' favorite. Spoilers. Everyone loves to talk about Rick in the Robotech community. Oh, man. So, there's this moment coming up. There's, talk about it with some of the more nitpicky people, where, like, they wouldn't really survive, in that plane, especially with what happens here in a minute, out in space. And, some of the ideas with, like, the city being sucked up or whatever, and those bunkers that they're in surviving space being airlocked tight, for space, and not being destroyed when, they get crushed into here in a few minutes. There's this thing that a lot of people that are a little too nitpicky about stuff forget about. And it's called suspension of disbelief. Right? A lot of modern critics now, I feel, go way too far into, like, the Cinema Sins style critique, which I don't even think Cinema Sins really went about it to critique. I think they did it for fun, Oh, look at all these inconsistencies, right? I don't think they did it to critique, but a lot of people have gone that path of, oh, look at these tiny little inconsistencies. See how this isn't a great show because these... You have to be able to turn your mind off and just kind of accept things. Now, sometimes things will be way too past that suspension of disbelief threshold, and then you can have a conversation about that. But as far as something like this, it's a silly little campy sci-fi show, right? So what if they're flying a regular plane in the vacuum of space? So what if the bunkers are just sitting there in that city, frozen over, getting crashed into by, the SDF-1? I love this red light effect, by the way. That is something that is reasonable, like to actually suspend disbelief. It's not that far out of the realm. Like you look at some of the stuff in, Star Trek and Star Wars, like it happens. I mean, in all of these sci-fi shows, period, there's sounds when they're flying around in space, right? Sound doesn't exist in space. You guys know that, right? Sound doesn't exist in space because sound require vibrations in air. It's a vacuum, so there's no air, so there's no vibrations in the air. Thus, no sound. It's not. But if you were to play all of these clips, from Star Wars, from Star Trek, and there is no sound when they're flying around in space, right? It'll immediately take you out of it. It immediately breaks the suspension of disbelief, even though that is what would really happen. So, it's just, that's just my 2 bits on it, I mean, they even have, like, this freezing over. That's a nice little detail that makes up for the lack of air, I don't know. They wouldn't be able to fly like that. So, some of those destroids down there on the SDF-1 don't look good. I mean, I realize it's a faraway shot, but man, it looks like 3 giant deformed destroids fighting a bunch of battle pods. The battle pods looked fine. Even the distant ones looked fine. Rick Dirtface alert. And I do like the idea of like the self-repairing ship, even though, again, doesn't really make sense when you think about it. But I love that idea. And now there they are, safe and sound. And the ending music playing before the narration. Bum bum. And I love how they timed out the explosion for the bum bum. So now they're starting to evacuate the refugees, which that's the one thing I'm wondering about. And it's not even that. I'm like, there's no way they could have done it. I'm just curious how you go about. Oh, big twist. They're not behind the moon. They're on Pluto. I want to know how they moved those bunkers. That's something I'm wondering about. Bum bum bum. That was the Robotech version of the bum bum bum. And now they all cry. The subtitles are way behind, by the way. I'm watching it with subtitles. They are very far behind. He just said, well, now it's going to be a long trip on the subtitles. So, this next episode is going to be an interesting one to talk about. For multiple reasons, if my earbuds would stay inside. Saga of Robotech. So that was it for me. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'm going to try to create more bullet points now that I'm kind of back in the groove. Be sure to check out the podcast. I've mentioned it in the beginning, youtube.com/theexaplays. It's called Extra Extra. You can also find it on Google and Spotify. I do appreciate everything you guys do. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell for notifications of every new upload, and I will see you guys next time.